Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for this session on unlocking the power of trade for digital development. We are very grateful to the World Trade Organization for enabling us to have this session, as well as to the Global Shapers community for their support to this session organized by the Global Shapers Paris Hub. The Global Shapers is an initiative of the World Economic Forum, bringing together a worldwide network of more than 500 local hubs. The Global Shapers mission is to connect, empower, and inspire leaders to reach their full potential, amplify emerging voices, and positively shape their communities and the world. My name is Lily Vissereau. I'm a research fellow and teaching fellow at Harvard University, and I'm absolutely delighted to be joined today by four very inspiring panelists that I'll introduce. First, we have Edilène. Edilène Gauthier is a hardware engineer and currently working as a digital product manager at L'Oréal, contributing to the company's beauty tech transformation. Edilène also serves as the curator of the Global Shapers Paris Hub, and she's passionate about empowering youth and building more equitable tech-enabled futures. Next to Edilène, we have Stephen. Stephen Chi is a staff assistant at the African Department of the International Monetary Fund, where he supports workflow as well as the production of analytical insights. And he also serves as the curator of the Global Shapers DC Hub. Then we have Ms. Rosemary Momo. Rosemary is a senior solutions engineer at Commerce Tools and a member of the Global Shapers London 2 hub. And she brings nearly a decade of experience guiding enterprise businesses through the evaluation and adoption of modern fintech and commerce solutions. And last but not least, we have Théophile. Théophile Ouessou is a machine learning engineer and PhD candidate at the University of Geneva. He has experience across diverse organizations where he has spearheaded digital transformation and is a proud member of the Geneva Hub. Thank you so much all for joining us today for what I'm sure will be a very inspiring conversation. To kick us off, I would like to ask to each of you what is, in your opinion, one key enabler of digital trade fostering more global integration. And I'll start with the person closest to me. Edilène, if you want to start.
So, hello everyone. Thank you, Lily, for hosting this session. So, as a young professional at L'Oréal, my very first project was a global supply chain IT harmonization, which gave me a direct insight into one of the most critical enablers for global digital trade. So the key enabler is quite simple, but robust at the same time. It's a unified and robust global IT infrastructure. Actually, today, companies face immense operational fragmentation. Imagine at L'Oréal, today we're managing more than 77 million customer order, processes 3 million supplier invoice across the globe, and all of this managed by 40,000 employees, countless on different platforms and different processes. So the idea is this fragmentation today leads to a huge waste of resources, time, and energy. That's why it's so important to create a single and standardized digital backbone. This means harmonizing data, process, end-to-end, so from factories to customers, and being able, through this standardization, to drive massive efficiency, interoperability, because it's a non-negotiable for competitive digital trade. It's important as well, can you hear me? Yeah. It's important as well to provide a single source of truth. What I mean by that, it's important to have harmonizing data that becoming instantly available for finance, operation, commerce, that enabling real-time market knowledge, which serve us to better understand our clients. And lastly, it forces as well innovation. How? By allowing rapidly helping us to adopt new technology, new services, and launch new brands such as Aesop recently. So in essence, building harmonized IT infrastructure isn't just an ambition, let's say, IT in internal optimization. From my experience, it's really a way to mastering complexity, to create more simplicity, efficiency, and being able to be the most vital possible for the future of global commerce.
Thank you so much, Edilene. Stephen, if you would like to also answer the question about the one key enabler.
Yeah, sure, I'll be happy to. I mean, Edilene, you gave such great answers. I think I should just walk off the stage at this point and give the mic back to you. But I think you bring us a great point, right? Innovation is very important. Allow me to just quickly add on that as well. I think, in my opinion, digital public goods is crucial enabler for the proliferation of digital trade as an enabler. Why? Why digital public goods? Because the moment something becomes entirely privatized, equality becomes entrenched, right? So what do I mean by investments in digital public goods? I mean open source data sharing. I mean open AI models. Perhaps our friend Theophile can talk a little bit more about that. Open AI models and source code sharing, as well as open standards, monetary transfers, and cross-border financial flows. Because when we talk about investing in digital public goods, we need to go beyond just urban areas. I think the low-hanging fruit is for us to just invest digital public goods in urban areas. However, I think we need to make the difficult choice and actually look more so at rural areas, because that's where they need this connectivity and the infrastructure the most. If we look at the dynamics of many urban-rural area dynamic, we'll realize that you have a lot of consumers who are based in urban areas, a lot of consumption who are centralized in urban areas, and then you have a lot of producers, supply side, in rural areas. And it's those, like farms and factories, those firms that needs critically the infrastructure of digital public goods so they can be more plugged in to the value chain as a whole. So, to summarize, I think in an uncertain world filled with uncertainties, we need to better connect people throughout the entire value chain in order for digital trade to really work and harmonize with each other.
Thank you, Stephen, for this very interesting and important point about digital public good. Rosemary, for you, the one key enabler?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Edilene there that we need strong digital infrastructure and digital public goods. Personally, I think skills are the key enabler. Without skills, we run the risk of investing in a workforce that looks digitally forward, but fundamentally underneath is actually quite segregated and segmented. If you think of a ladder, for example, at the bottom we've got the standard technical skills, SMS, messaging, email. My mom runs a multi-million naira business in Nigeria from her phone, WhatsApp, and Excel sheets. She doesn't know AI, she's not interested. When we go further up the skills, further up the ladder, we get to advanced data analysis, personalization, storefront management. But across communities and individuals, the pace at which these skills are being adopted and learned is actually unmatched. If we don't invest and ensure that it's equitable, not only do we have unequal skills adoption, we also prevent them from actually contributing back to the economy. And that weakens the loop, in my opinion, of the relationship between, innovation, trade, and digital economy in general. So I think that digital infrastructure and the pace at which we're investing in it needs to be matched with equitable and investment in skills for true, deeper global integration. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Rosemary, for highlighting the importance of digital skills. Theophile, you're very digitally skilled as a PhD. Can you tell us what, in your opinion, is the key enabler?
Sure, I'm happy to do that. So you're asking for one key enabler, but I'm going to be very generous here and give you two.
Wow.
So it really depends on the part of the world you are looking at. If we are looking at developed countries, the key enabler will be standardizations. We need standards for interoperability. We need standards to lower the entry barrier for SMEs, for instance. We also need standards for a resilience system, resilience to geopolitical disruptions. So that's for one part of the world. So for the other part of the world, actually, let me bring the African perspective here. In Africa, the key enabler will actually be digitalization. We need to digitalize the trade systems in Africa. Africa is a huge market of 1.7 billion people today, and the projections are 2.7 billion by 2050. So digitalization is a key enabler, and many countries already understand that. If you look at Benin, for instance, Benin has e-services. They digitalize their e-services, and today you can have documents needed for trade within hours. If you look at Rwanda, Rwanda has the e-single window, and it just reduced by half the processing time for trade documents. And last but not least, Morocco. Morocco has the Bill of Ladings system, which is a huge success today. So just to wrap up, two key enablers here. One is standards, the other one is digitalization.
Thank you so much, Théophile. And you mentioned digitalization, especially for Africa. I think we all agree that one of the key barriers is also what Rosemary mentioned earlier, which is basically digital skills. And Rosemary, you built as a global shaper, Shaping Digital Futures, a multi-hub initiative focused on bridging the digital skills gap and basically empowering the youth with digital skills to bridge the digital divide, especially in underserved and underprivileged communities. Can you please talk to us more about this initiative and, in your opinion, what role can increased digital skills play in making digital trade more equitable?
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, it's all about skills, and that's why we launched Shaping Digital Futures. The World Economic Forum projects that we're in 2025, and 50% of the workforce is going to need to upskill. And by 2030, we estimated about 800 million jobs potentially being replaced by AI automation. Today, comparative advantages vary across countries, but fundamentally we can see that it's sort of changed from natural resources, labor and capital to skills development, infrastructure, IP, regulation, protection. And essentially for me, it's so clear that for countries, for companies, for individuals to bridge that gap, it's investing in the skills. Capital is always there, but it varies across countries. Actually, and services industry is also projected to potentially take up a fourth of the global trade ecosystem by 2030. So it's almost a no-brainer here. Shaping Digital Futures is an initiative focused on preparing young adults just as they enter the workforce. And our goal is to make sure they can build resilience and skills to feel confident as they enter, either as entrepreneurs or actually as employees. We launched in London. Currently, we've had about 5 workshops cutting across AI, data, design thinking, 3D printers and animation, building a digital bank, and we've had about 65 participants. Our goal is that we can scale this across different hubs across the world. We're currently enabling about 7 more. We have very ambitious goals. We want to educate 15,000 people by 2030. We want to create an ecosystem of strong experts across these digital gaps, areas that we've identified as gaps. We also want to create learning pathways that each hub can take and sort of make them more personalized for their regions. A hub in Bangladesh is going to be very different from what a hub in Nigeria does. Ultimately, what we're seeing across the board is that the young adults really need to, they're so comfortable with digitization, but they're not necessarily comfortable with how it actually converts to trade and how they can compete. One of the sessions, we actually had a student, she's getting her master's in social sciences, and she came saying she's struggling to figure out how to apply AI to, her master's degree as she goes forward. And after the workshop and the AI workshop and our workshops on CV, I'm not going to take credit for everything, but she essentially came up saying that we've actually helped her feel more comfortable about what that future looks like. And I think stories like that are sort of what motivates me to keep investing in this. So as I said, We have a goal of 2030. If you know hubs around your area, feel free to tell them to reach out to Shaping Digital Futures, and that's essentially what we're going to be doing. And I think across the board, if younger individuals feel more confident entering the workforce and they feel enabled, digital infrastructure is only as diverse and it's only as inclusive as the individuals that represent and participate in it. And that's sort of my opinion on why it's so important for an inclusive ecosystem.
Thank you, Rosemary, for sharing about this very inspiring project, and we'll really hope that you'll be able to reach your 2030 goals. You mentioned how a young person felt, almost overwhelmed by AI, and it's true that those new technology, AI, blockchain, quantum computing, are the way the digital space works in general, and so de facto also how digital trade works. And this is why I want to ask our technology expert Théophile, how are those technologies reshaping the infrastructure of digital trade from your perspective, and how can policymakers ensure that regulatory frameworks keep pace with technological innovation, in alignment with the goal that we all share of security, trust, and inclusivity?
That's actually a very good question, Lily. So, this is actually the first time in our modern history we are asking policymakers to regulate something nobody really understands. And when I say nobody, I include researchers like myself. So, how does these models work actually? We have data points, so we have data sets. We have an architecture that at least we understand. We know the architecture we are using. We have the data point. We feed the data into the models, into the architecture. We get a model, and then we test the capabilities of the model. And then we write papers and we publish. That's how it's working right now. So just to say, it's quite difficult today to understand how these models work exactly. And one of the most important things we really have to focus on now is digital literacy. In the Geneva Hub, for instance, we have a similar project to what you are doing. We have Voyage Numérique. However, Voyage Numérique is more for younger students. So I'm very happy to discuss about your project afterwards. So digital literacy is very important, not only for students, but also for for policymakers. Policymakers need to sit with researchers to understand the models. Then create sandboxes. They have to work on sandboxes, pilot programs to understand the capabilities of the model before creating a framework for regulation. So.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Théophile, and for reminding us of the basis of how the model works. We just discussed how policymakers can kind of address those challenges. We also have you, Edilene, who works for the private sector, and working at L'Oréal gives you quite of a unique perspective. And I would love to hear how digitalization is transforming the beauty business and your perspectives on it.
Sure. So indeed, I'm part of the beauty tech team, and today our customer estimate to grow from 1.3 billion to 2 billion by 2034. And today they expected to have more solutions tailored by their individual performance. So which means that this demand is made by the explosion of our beauty tech services, which represent over than 100 million of use each year, and this across like 33 brands and 60 countries. That's huge. So let's say that today we are shifting from a simple selling product model to a creative, interactive, and hyper-personalized ecosystem where the consumer is at the heart of his own beauty journey and became quite a co-creator of his beauty journey. So this also brings a lot of opportunity for inclusion, as you were mentioning, and diversity in the beauty. So how? So we do have a lot of digital too. I will mention a few of them. We have, as I mentioned, hyper-personalized diagnostic recommendation. We have, for example, Cell Bioprint, which is a little lab on a ship that enable advanced skin diagnostics, and this allowing us to recommend skincare routine, some like really personalized program to our customer. These platforms are really powered by AI, such as, for example, some beauty agents, which enable our customer to receive a lot of advices, so 24-hour every days. And it's really interesting because through this AI-powered platform, we are able to enable our customer to try this different makeup, this different functionality through this platform, and this enable to design high precision facial recognition. So you were mentioning earlier, Théophile, like some models. We do have as well at L'Oréal some models that are trained on inclusive image from different age, ethnicities, different gender, and this is the key point that ensure the most accurate, appealing, inclusive customer experience. So it's really important for us to, let's say, make our technology accessible from all type of customer across the world. And I do believe that right now we are shifting from a pushing approach. Like before, brand used to be not the detector, but they were like detecting what is the trend of the world. Right now, we are moving to a more pull approach. The customer or are at the center, as I mentioned, of their beautiful journey, and they're able to influence our direction in the way we're going to design our services.
Super interesting, very, very exciting. Thank you for sharing, Edilene. And you were just talking about all this innovation in the beauty space, which could be seen as starkly contrasting with what Théophile was mentioning earlier, with developing countries struggling to access digitalization. And in that, with that two perspectives, we can wonder, and maybe Stephen, you want to answer this question, how should the playing field be leveled for all countries to play on an equal foot? And especially since you work at the IMF, what can international organizations do to enable a level playing field between countries?
No, thank you very much. That is a great question. But before I answer that, Edilene, I'm coming to you for some L'Oréal samples after this this panel. If anyone here is going up to Edilene after this panel to get samples, I'm here first, okay? We'll discuss on that. But before I dive into my answer, I just want to put out a quick disclaimer, right? My personal opinion here is my personal opinion, and it does not reflect the official position of the International Monetary Fund. So just putting it on record. So to answer your question, I think throughout this public forum and throughout the past year, we always hear there's always some kind of buzzwords going around these spaces, right? I think this year is AI. AI this, AI that, AI in everything. AI to boost productivity, AI to replace the workforce, AI to take care of your children. I mean, like, the opportunity is endless. But I think how can we level the playing field requires us going back to the basics. Because before we even introduce high-level conversations and thinkings and writings on AI, which I think is very important because, like my good friend Théophile said, we have to think about these things proactively. However, from a development point of view, we have to go back to the basics. Before we talk about AI, we talk about connectivity, we talk about electrification, we talk about affordability, we talk about stable infrastructure. Without all of these things, we cannot talk about the development of AI. So let's go back to basics and take a look at some of the first order priorities. And in my opinion, that would be electricity, internet coverage, affordability, and adaptability. And all of that ties into stability. You cannot have a stable network of infrastructure that promotes digital trade if your network is unstable, if it's not stabilized across within the country, and also across the border as well. So since I'm in the Africa department, let me use Africa as an example. Right now, if we look at electrification, the world average sits at 90% electrified, whereas the SSA, also sub-Saharan African region, sits at 50%, and that has been growing a lot. However, we know there's a lot of room to grow, which is why the World Bank has been pushing this huge, this huge campaign on Africa 300 to power the entire Africa by 2030, I believe. But if we also look at internet coverage, 80 to 100% of the population are provided with 4G in Africa. So that's good. That's a lot of growth. Then it starts to drop a little bit when we look at affordability. So if we look at data-only mobile broadband, globally, that costs around 1.2% of the GNI. However, in Africa, it can cost anywhere from 1.6 to 5.5%. So how can we talk about digital trade, microfinancing, and cross-border flows if the average citizen is struggling to afford their phone bill? That doesn't make much sense, in my opinion. That's why we had to go back to the basics, right? So there is no digital trade, in my opinion, without proper infrastructure, capacity, and regulatory framework. And that's where multilateral organizations come in, organizations such as the WTO, organizations such as the World Bank, the IMF, the UN system as a whole. They really can come in and provide that technical assistance, that capacity building, which they have already been doing for decades. But I think there's also opportunity here to level the playing field more than just capacity building or technical assistance. Is for experts to be more plugged in to what's happening on the local level, what's happening on the ground, so they can be better informed on their technical assistance and capacity building missions. Because at the end of the day, we're here to provide what the community needs the most. And I think in order for us to truly bridge the divide and level the playing field between the haves and the have-nots, it's really about, the multilateral system being in touch with reality as it progresses, and being in touch with the needs of our member states and providing these pinpoint assistance. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for re-emphasizing this need to also go back to the basics. And we heard previously from Edilene about innovation in the private sector industry, from you right now about what international organizations can do to support governments. We also can think about what companies can do to facilitate increasing digitalization of trade, and how they can themselves balance and coordinate with international organizations, with government, to maybe self-regulate. And Rosemary, as an engineering specialist, could you tell us more about what you believe this architecture should look like from your private sector perspective?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think when I was asked, I sort of thought of, do I go about it from what the private sector can do, or do I talk about the ecosystem around the private sector and how that naturally then enables the private sector? And that's what I decided on. So that's my take. But just to go a bit deeper here, I think Stephen, you've beat it with a dead horse of when the environment is efficient and it's stable and provides the right requirements, businesses and economies can thrive. And I think that's key. If it's there, across the world, all these economies are just going to thrive. Also, I think governments do need to build trust in these economies, and that trust looks like consumer protection laws, data privacy, just fairness across the board, fair competition. When we look at consumer protection laws and data privacy, I work in commerce, and today I see different types of what different brands are trying to do. That ranges from TikTok shopping, to agentic commerce. And if you've not heard of agentic commerce, you will see it soon. But all of these things are scaling and they're growing so fast. And it's so clear to me all the risks that underpin these. And I can see how across different communities and ecosystems, there's such a divide. I think if governments don't prioritize making this consistent, both at the regional level, national level, and global level, the private sector doesn't thrive the way it should. On the flip side, private sector will thrive despite all these things, but how do the consumers trust and how can they give back? Because what we end up seeing is, just advertising that's predatory and unsafe, or unsafe goods are being sold, or my data is not protected because I bought from a country that just doesn't have the resources in place to protect it. So I think governments do need to invest in just building trust in digital economies. Also, fair competition. We have, big monopolies today that are benefiting a lot from how fast digitization is progressing. If the lower players can't access and if they can't grow, that leads to an imbalance. And private sector grows, but it's only skews in a certain direction. from a different standpoint, I think IOs, I'll come at it slightly different from Stephen's point here. I think they can actually help build consistently globally. And I think consistently looks like consumer authentication. Anywhere in the world, I want to be able to authenticate who I am, and I should be able to know who I'm buying from and who I'm selling to in different ways, whether that's localized per region. But I do think that IOs can help in building some level of consistency on what that actually looks like. On the flip side, I think they can also enable trade agreements, for example. They're so regional, and yes, we've got the multilateral ones, but what US and Mexico has is so different from what Africa needs. For example, the Africa Continental Trade Protocol is one of the first of its kind in the region. I'm going to wrap up quickly just by reiterating that IOs and governments need to build trust, and they need to help build consistency. Africa has become the topic of today's conversation, and I think it's clear why that's the case. For example, when you look at IP filings across the world, 2/3 of them are concentrated in the US, Japan, South Korea, and the EU, with Africa taking only 1%. So how can I, as a private business in Africa, produce without knowing that my IP will be protected? And if my IP is not protected, do I contribute, or do I contribute with the knowledge that someone else is going to take it and run with it? So that's my opinion, and that's how I think the private sector and governments and IO can work hand in hand to create, a better, inclusive, and more equitable ecosystem.
Thank you. And you just mentioned how, for you, one of the priorities was that government coordinate, that it leads to a certain level of harmonization. And we recently and progressively have seen how the joint statement initiative of the WTO has been evolving and progressing since 2017. Stephen, what are your perspective on this agreement, and what role do you think it can play in establishing a global framework for a rules-based digital trade? Are you hopeful? We need some hope.
It's a good question to ask me during the current external environment, but let me just start off to say I love the JSI. Just a little bit background, the JSI, the Joint Statement Initiative, is on trade, is on e-commerce. It relates to matters regarding trade that is conducted through e-commerce that was ratified at the WTO as of June 25th, 2024, we have 91 WTO members who signed off on the JSI. And personally, I think it is an incredibly important milestone because it shows that there are still countries, many countries, who are willing and want to talk to each other. And the signal it gives off is more than just political or diplomatic. If we look at from a realist perspective, let's take L'Oreal, for example, right? It's a multinational corporation. Would these multinational corporations want one set of rules that can be interchangeable throughout the world that provides predictability, or would they want one set of rules for each region, for each sub-region? I think the cost trade-off balance is very, very clear, right? With multinationals that perhaps have a supply chain globally, you might source raw material from one part of the world and have your production facility in another part of the world, and then we throw in a tariff as a mix. It really is not that good for business, and we're seeing the damage right now. And that's why the JSI and e-commerce is incredibly important, because like many panelists throughout the public forum has said, predictability is good for business who wants to grow sustainably. It is not good for speculators. And unfortunately, we are having a lot more speculator and speculation that's filling the market. And I think that brings a source of caution as a source of concern. That's why we need initiatives like the JSI, especially when more than 60% of the global GDP is, in one way or another, involves a digital trade transaction. So we need these global rules to come together that brings the balance, not just for the countries that already have mature digital infrastructure that's very much embedded in the global digital trade system, but it's actually more beneficial to the countries who are still exploring and how to build up their digital trade infrastructure to be more integrated in the global digital trade system. Because even though some of the provisions may not necessarily apply from the JSI, may not necessarily apply to those member states, they have something the blueprint that they can work off of. They have the experience of the countries who already went through these trials and errors, and they're saying, hey, this is what's working, this is what's not working, this is what needs regulation, this is what needs more regulation, this is what needs less regulation thereof. And it also involves, on a global scale, countries who already are mature in these digital trade systems to share knowledge with countries who are still trying to build their capacities. And at the end of the day, it is not about this is what I have and I'm going to gatekeep what I have, and this is you standing alone in your corner and you never have what I have, because the global economy is incredibly integrated at this point that any sentiment of, oh, we can survive entirely on ourselves is unrealistic. Like, supply chain integration is not going to fade away, and there is, like the previous panelist said, every single trade deal has a trade-off, but we're seeing the benefits to private sectors, we're seeing the benefits to the public sector, to governments, and we're seeing the benefits to development as a whole, because at the end of the day, you know, why would firms want chaos if they can have predictability? And the JSI on e-commerce that has been negotiated through the WTO provides just that. I do recognize that going forward is going to be incredibly more difficult to reach consensus, large-scale consensus on these matters due to the current trade landscapes. But personally, maybe because we're all global shapers, I'm very hopeful here. I'm very hopeful. Why? Because we also have young people who are parliamentarians, young people who are in governments, young people who are in private sector businesses, young people who are in international organizations, entrepreneurs, and they realize that at the end of the day, we have to work together. So although the uncertainty may be shocking, although the uncertainty is present, I believe that this phase will pass, and then we will eventually see the benefits of working together equitably, highlighting equitably, to build that stronger future based on global consensus. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think that's definitely part of the, global shippers mentality to push things forward and having a strong belief in youth as a future leader to be able to catalyst change. At the beginning of your intervention, you mentioned the need for predictability, something that Rosemary also you highlighted, that for business to strive, we truly need regulation predictability. And one of the sectors where digital is increasingly under scrutiny for regulation, it's because of its environmental impact. And Théophile, as an engineer, you've already been kind enough to explain to us the very basics of how AI works. We would really love to hear from you on, understanding the current environmental impacts of digital trade, the main drivers behind them, how you see these impacts evolving in the future, and what we can do. And those are a lot of questions, so please take the time you need to answer them, because we do feel like this topic is truly crucial. Thank you.
So many things to say here. Do we have 1 hour? So I will answer your question by taking an example. I think it may be easier to explain what I'm going to say. Okay, so let's take the example of a t-shirt that you buy. I will walk you through what I think here. A t-shirt costs 10 francs or $10. Let's take dollars for the example. $10. You buy the t-shirt, $10. One t-shirt needs 2,700 liters of water to be produced. The t-shirt you are seeing online is advertised on a platform, digital platform. The digital platform is on a server, and the server in a data center. One platform should be at least on 2 different servers. It's how we design data centers for redundancies. We need redundancies for security and other reasons, but at least the t-shirt you see online is on 2 different servers for security reasons. You order a t-shirt online, but it's not just one t-shirt. You know how we do it, right? We always take many items. We just select many items on the website. We ask the company to ship them to our house. We try 1 or 2. And we may like 2 out of 10. Then we have to return the remaining 8 items to the company. So basically, we have CO2 emissions for 8 items that you are not buying for in and out transports, which is a huge problem today. So yeah, there are so many issues with digital trade. I have to be honest on this as well, but they are inherent to trade itself, right? So these are the issues I can share in a few minutes.
Okay, and I'd be curious if you can share about this, of course. We have those issues linked by trade, but if we think about even digital services, we'd love your engineering perspective on how, things like servers can consume water, resources, and if you could talk to us about like the environmental impact that you know of in that capacity, if you're able to share, of course.
Yeah, sure. So I worked for a data center company years ago, and one of the things we can do today, just to bring a bit of hope to what I said before, one of the things we can do today is to think about the cooling system for the data centers. We already know companies are already working on greener solution for cooling in data centers, so they are already existing. However, they may not be cost efficient for data centers company, and that's something maybe regulators, policymakers can think about. Think about a way, they should think about a way to incentivize companies to go to greener solutions for cooling systems. So that's one solution for servers. I have another solution for you again. And the other solution people are also working on right now in the field is what we call digital tryouts. So basically, it's an augmented reality solution for you to try your t-shirts before buying it. So you see whether the t-shirt fits you or not, and then you avoid buying many t-shirts that you will end up returning to the company. With that being said, I'm not delulu. I'm not delusional at all. I don't think technology is the only way to solve this environmental impact. I truly believe that nothing beats common sense. And we are coming back to the digital literacy part. We have to explain to people the impact of their habits on this platform, on the environment.
No, very interesting. I think your point basically on thinking about digital trade, environmental impact as it's basically comparing just regular trade minus what digital can enable us to save. I think the software you mentioned resembles a bit what Edilene you were mentioning about beauty products, but plus the additional emissions that might be linked to the digital infrastructure such as servers. And once again, we come back to the ever question in environmental studies of externality. But yeah, coming back to this idea of Edilene, you were mentioning you are developing, for instance, beauty products that can be matched thanks to technology to better match the diversity of people. We've discussed, youth and underprivileged skills. We've discussed the environment. Something we see that's also kind of a hindrance of digital trade is the extent to which it's able to include women in it. So in your opinion, what are the key factors that can enable digital trade to be a lever for women's digital development and empowerment?
So I will give my personal experience. I was by myself a woman entrepreneur in 2019 when I was in Taiwan, but I will not speak only on my experience. I will mention a project that I launched when I was in Benin in the same year, in 2019. I was able to interview a female entrepreneur, to interview NGO, to better understand how the digital was tackled in Benin, especially. And I will mention, let's say, two key factors. I do believe that digital trade truly empower women, but when there is an active support of the women by creating a supportive ecosystem. And what I mean by that, I already heard in this different conference since the last 2 days that we need to reinforce the message that women need mentorship, for example. They need as well that we create dedicated space to have more network. We need as well to provide target access to financing. You were mentioning earlier, Rosemary, microcredit, for example. So I saw powerful initiatives that were created by a biotech accelerator that is named A3 Labs, which is a program that trains women not only on digital skills, but only about how to be able to be prepared for the entrepreneurial market. And they train, I think, more than than 95,000 young people, women, which enable them to move to a precarious, let's say, informal work sometime to formal higher paying job. So this directly enhances their leadership into tech sector. So I truly believe as well that it's important to give visibility to underrepresented women, and especially through digital platform. I will give an example of Zerina Akers, who is the owner of Black Own Everything. So basically, she started with an Instagram page, an Instagram account, to give visibility to the Black products, because a lot of Black-owned brands, let's say back in the time, were not, let's say, visible. So through this Instagram page, she was able to create a really a very precious luxury e-commerce marketplace to be able to give a more global reach to this brand. And I do believe it's essential by this model to expand these economic opportunities and challenging historical exclusion. Another point for me that is really as well important is we need, through this digital environment, to being able to have clear and firm measure to, let's say, not or having this digital space on a safety level, because we do have a lot of online harassment, and we need to be, let's say, cautious that women that will leverage this digital trade will be, let's say, in a proper digital space that will cultivate a supportive ecosystem through this ecosystem as well.
Yeah, I mean, safety is definitely a concern, and we've seen, for instance, in France, how the mandatory public registration online of micro entrepreneurs was threatening entrepreneurs' safety, including digital entrepreneurs and including women, which led to the current reform that is being undergone of basically not mandating that their personal address is published online. So it's really about rethinking the whole legal framework, because you can't do a digital trade like you do any trade. But thank you all for sharing your insights. I want to close us off by listening from you. I know you've had many interactions with leaders in the past 2 days, and you're really the voices of youth of the future as global shapers. What is for you the one message that you want those leaders that are here today to hear from you? And I'll start with Edilene again, if you don't mind.
Sure. I will say I will take the example of yesterday. We had like some colleagues that were at the same stage. They are the WTO young leader, and they were asking to the public how many people were able to connect with young people and support them, or at least give them the opportunity to collaborate to the initiative. And basically, there were not a lot of people raising the hand. So I will share, let's say, the same message. Let's say, as young, we're not only beneficiary of the digital trade. We really here, and we have this opportunity as Global Shipper to have this dedicated platform today to amplify our voice, but let's try to be more co-creator, and please invite us more to this space to being able to share our perspective. And yeah, just say we need as well to have more mentors, more sponsors to our different professional background, to being able to enhance and to leverage the digital trade for tomorrow.
Thank you, Edilene. Very inspiring. And we do need more mentors and sponsors and more participants also in all of our hubs across the world. Stephen?
Yes, thank you. And Adeline, I think mentorship is such an important and for young people, because I remember the only reason why I'm sitting here today, the only reason why I was one of the youngest staff member at the International Monetary Fund was because of my mentor, who took me under her wings and decided to saw potential in me and decided to give me that chance. So really, mentorship is incredibly important. My message is to the world leaders is very direct. I'm speaking from a personal point of view. I'm speaking as a global shaper, and my message is to those working hard to making this life, to making our planet one that's worth living on. We salute you. To those who are fueling division, hate, and conflict, know that young people will not sit idle while we inherit a world as a result of your greed. Young people like the global shapers supported by the World Economic Forum, we're here actively trying to create, implement solutions that will make this world a better place. So please, work with us and not against us.
How can I follow that up? Really good there, Stephen. And I would essentially echo what both of you have said. I think the youth and young people need to be in those rooms where the policies and the laws are being made. And the only way for us to, quote unquote, qualify to be there is when we have the skills and we have the knowledge that guarantees that we end up there. So to flip it on its head, I think it looks like we want to be invested in, we want to be prioritized, we want more access to education, cross-border movement. I grew up in Nigeria. I moved to the US when I was pretty young. I now live in the UK, and that experience for me has shaped my world. I'm not in any of those rooms where laws and policies are being made, but just that access and being able to move around has really led to my growth today. So I think, yeah, we want the world leaders to invest in us, to invest in our skills, to invest in our movement and education, because that's how we get to be in those rooms to make the laws and policies that make digital trade more inclusive and empowering.
It's a good challenge to go after you. So I truly believe that beyond the economic opportunity that digital trade represents, digital trade is actually a tool to bridge inequalities. With that being said, we need to shape. I really like the word shape as a shaper. We really need to shape our digital trade system. It has to be sustainable, resilient, and powered by the young people we are, but all generation, to be more specific, all the generation has to bring their wisdom to build this digital trade system, because the future of our planet depends on it.
Thank you so much, Théophile. Please join me in thanking our global shapers for their time today and sharing with us their insight. It's been truly a wonderful session. And I want to say we didn't want to have a formal Q&A, but we wanted to chat with you informally at the end of the session. So please come and do reach out asking us more about the wonderful project that we do in the Global Shapers community. Thank you.